Is foot pain getting in your way? Hi, I'm Dr. Melissa, and in today's class, we are going over exercises to help improve your foot pain and one of the reasons why this foot pain might be lingering for you. Go grab your mats and let's do this. Do you feel like you've stretched and done all of the exercises, but that foot pain is still lingering? Did you know that there are several connections between our feet and our pelvic floor? And this includes the movement that happens at our feet, comes up the chain, our fascia, it's our connective tissue. Imagine like putting on a bodysuit like Spider-Man. Our fascia helps our tissues glide and slide and move back and forth. And then there are our nerves and several other connections. So there's lots of ways that we can address what's going on in the pelvic floor to our feet and our feet to our pelvic floor. And that's exactly what we are doing in today's class. So let's get started. Coming into a standing position. Nice breath in. I want you to check in with your feet. What do you feel? What do you notice? And before we get rolling, if you happen to have some yoga blocks or pillows, go ahead and grab those. And I'm going to be using some rad balls. I will link those up here for you. You could also use a golf ball or tennis ball as well. So now back to our feet. Spread those toes. Maybe move forward, move backwards. What do you notice about your left side and your right side? And then I want you to really try to spread those toes out. Do they move? Maybe they don't. And that's okay. We're going to come back to this later on. But take a peek. Do you have space in between your toes? Do they want to spread out? Are they going in different directions? What's happening? And then let those toes come back down. And we're just going to come to a forward fold. Let your head get super heavy. Notice where your hands are on the ground. Notice what you feel at the bottom of your feet, up the back of your calves, up the back of your thighs, coming into your low back. Check out everything. Nice, gentle breath in. And exhale, let it go. Nice. We're going to come back to this again too. So just remember what that felt like when we first got started. And I'm going to grab my rad ball, a smaller one. You could also use a golf ball or a tennis or lacrosse ball. We're going to place that down on the ground. And you're going to start by putting the ball in between your first and second toe. And we're going to kind of work our way down the whole entire foot. So let's start on our right-hand side. And I'm definitely not testing your balance here, so you can hold on to something. But we're going to start in between the first and second toe and roll down towards your heel. And we'll do about 5 or 6 sweeps in between each of those toes. And you're noticing, is it tender? I call them like the Rice Krispies. Do you feel like snap, crackle, pop as you're moving the ball along? And you're not digging as hard as you possibly can. We're putting some good pressure. It's going to feel a little uncomfortable, but that hurt but feels good. Now let's work in between our second and third toe. And I always love doing left side and right side. If you're in a time crunch, you can definitely do the side that's bothering you the most. But just in terms of our whole body and the different ways we talked about the feet being connected to the pelvic floor, doing both sides is a great way to balance things out. Let's move between our third and fourth toes. Yeah. And I want you to see, is your foot a little more tender on the inside or the outside edge of your foot? Ooh. I broke this ankle a couple years ago, and I'm amazed at how tender the outside of my foot still is. I can do everything I want, but when I do specific exercises, I need to get back to these a little more. Ooh, and then all the way out now. Oh my goodness. Use your breath. Make sure you're not gripping, holding anything tight. Nice. And then let's come back. Both feet flat and bring awareness to the bottom of that foot that we just rolled. What's different? How does the foot feel with the pressure coming down to the ground, the contact points? And then let's move over to that left foot. So the same thing, we'll start in between the first and second toe, just rolling down, using that breath. So our feet, especially because of the shoes that we wear, tend to get very rigid and stiff, and we're not able to adapt to the ground and build up the strength. So really working on the mobility in our feet and building up that deep intrinsic strength in the bottom of our feet can be so important. Move between the second and third toe. And you might find that one foot is a little more rigid than the other foot. One foot is easier to feel the strengthening in than the other. And it's all about noticing those differences. Okay, third and fourth. And again, you can hold on here. I'm not testing your balance. Ooh. And then just keep working your way to the outer edge of your foot. The same thing. Is it more tender on the outside, on the inside? What do you notice? Nice. And then let's come off that ball. Both feet flat on the ground. And I want you to try to spread the toes again. Is it a little easier? Is it harder? Is it about the same? It's just checking in. It's giving ourselves information. Next one we're going to do for mobility is if you can do this sitting in a chair. I'm going to do it propped up on some blocks. We'll start with our left foot coming out in front. And you'll stack your fingers one on top of the other. You can also stack your thumbs. You could use like the back end of an eraser, but we're gonna work in between each of our toes. So really getting in between the metatarsals, those bones in the foot. And you might notice kind of along the web space between your first and second toe that's a little more tender around there. If you notice you've got a bunion, that foot's starting to come in, this area can get really rigid and tight in there. You can spend a little more time there. And the same thing, we'll just kind of work our way down the outside of the foot. 2 or 3 swipes each one. And isn't it amazing how tender the top of your foot can be? Ooh. And it's noticing it. Using your breath. Ooh. And then keep working the outside edge. And with any of these like myofascial rolling techniques, 30 to 60 seconds is plenty in each spot that you find, because sometimes we can just overhydrate those tissues and have the reverse effect of what we're looking for, that sliding and gliding. Awesome. Let's switch over to the other side. Same thing, stack the thumbs, stack those fingers, but we're going to work in between the first and second. And compare the two. You can kind of get in the inside of that big toe, especially if you have like stiff big toes. This area can get really tight, so loosening up the tissues here can be helpful. Let's work our way down, second and third. Nice. Third and fourth. Ooh. Remember to breathe. Try not to hold your breath. Same thing, you can do this sitting in a chair as well. And then that outside edge of your foot. Nice job. Okay. And then coming up from there, we're going to grab those blocks, and you don't need blocks for this next one, but they're there. We're going to take our right leg and scooch your right leg to the outside edge of the blocks. Maybe you scoot your left leg back a little bit more, but this right knee, we want the right knee coming forward over our toes and thinking of the whole pelvis going forward. You can bring those hands down to your blocks. Maybe you play with the height at what they're at. You can do little pulses with your right knee going forward, but we want your foot nice and flat on the ground. So in the beginning, we worked our feet where we're noticing that we're having discomfort, and now working further up the chain. Because we talked about at the beginning of class how that there's so many different connections between our feet and our pelvic floor. So sometimes working further up the chain can be really helpful for what's going down. What's going on down at our feet? Nice. Take one more breath in here. And as you're breathing, we want to send the breath to our low back, thinking down into those sit bones. And then we'll switch. Right leg comes back, The left leg can come out in front. Same thing, maybe you scooch your right leg back a little more. Left knee is going forward over those toes. We want to make sure the foot is nice and flat, that we're not rolled to the outer edge of that foot. Little tiny pulses. Opening up, use your breath. You can also just hold and keep using your breath there. Exhale, let it go. Nice. Does this side feel different than the other side? You notice a connection between maybe a foot that's a little more tender and hips that are a little tighter. Awesome. One more breath here. And then take that left leg, scooch your left leg back. And here's where if you've got blocks, we're going to go ahead and grab one, come down to a seated position. And you're going to place the block kind of in between your knees. Bring those hands back behind you. Think of staying lifted through your chest. Nice breath in. We're going to bring our legs over towards the left-hand side. You might have to adjust the block. You can also be using a pillow here. And that right leg is going to come down onto the block. We're thinking of rotating that pelvis forward, and take your right arm, reach your right arm up overhead. And then bring it back down. Bring the legs over towards the right hand side. Press down into that left leg. Maybe the left arm reaches up and over. Nice breath in. Slowly bring yourself, come back. Right leg comes down. Press, lift those hips and reach. And it's coming the rotation from the hips. We're thinking of pressing the legs into the ground. Inhale, lift. Nice. Now you can stay here with those hips down. We're staying lifted through the chest, lifted through the tail. If you wanted to add a little bit, you could press and lift your hips up. And then bring it back down. Over towards that right hand side. Really use your breath, filling up that rib cage. So when there's an area that's bothering us, it's not just that area. It's a symptom of what's going on. And we want to find where there's other areas that we can have an impact on so that we're not constantly dealing with those aches and pains. Bring it up and over. Last time here. Nice. And then bring it all the way back down. We're going to come onto our backs, but take the block, place the block between your feet, and we're going to grab the other block and placing that between our knees. So getting nice and heavy. Maybe wiggle your hips left and right. Think of like spreading those toes. Keep your feet nice and flat into the ground. And we're going to exhale. Squeeze the ankles first around the block. And the block can be resting on the ground. It doesn't have to be up. And then squeeze the knees. We're exhaling. Inhale, soften. Exhale, squeeze the block, the knees, and then those ankles. Inhale, soften. Exhale, squeeze. So we're just firing up the inner thighs. You might notice that core starts to fire up a little bit. We're blowing out those candles. We don't want to see any pushing here. We don't want to tuck or jam. So building a little strength. We worked on some mobility, now building some strength. Check in with the feet. What are the feet doing as you're working on this strengthening? Now, if this feels really good, you can stay here and continue with this. You can keep coming back to this class too to add on if you wanted to exhale, squeeze and lift. Inhale, drop. Exhale, squeeze and lift. Inhale, drop it back down. Spreading those toes, feet nice and flat into the ground. We're feeling those glutes fire up. Your notice opening in the front of the hips, those inner thighs. Making sure our head and neck stays nice and relaxed. For 3, 2. Nice work. Last one. Lower everything all the way back down. And let's take those blocks out. Roll onto your side, and let's make our way back up to a standing position. So in the beginning, we tested out spreading the toes and that forward fold. So let's come back to that. I want you to think of trying to spread your toes. Do you feel any difference? And it's okay if you don't. Spreading the toes definitely takes some practice working on that, but maybe it's a little looser, maybe it's a little easier. Maybe it's you notice some different connections with the feet to the ground. Now let's fold forward. Let your head get nice and heavy. Do your hands go further? Do you feel a difference in the back of the calves, in the back of your thigh, up into that low back? What do you notice? And we didn't stretch our hamstrings here at all. We worked the bottom of our feet. We worked on some hip mobility and strengthening. Bring those hands. So sometimes it's not just a matter of a tight muscle, because our body works together as systems. As we did here, we talked about the connection between our feet and our pelvic floor, and there's so many other connections. And if you're wanting to learn more about those, go ahead and check out that description box down below. Keep up the good work. Until next time, namaste.